All right, so welcome
Hi,
everyone.
you.
This is the Creative Recovery LA, the first application workshop. We are thrilled that you are here. My name is Angie Gaspar-Milanovic, and I'm the Director of Grants and Professional Development. And I would like to take a moment now to introduce our Director, Kristen Sakota. Kristen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kristen Sakota, Director of the Department of Arts and Culture, and have the distinct honor and privilege of serving in that role and working with our incredible team and working with all of you as part of our Los Angeles County cultural community. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that the County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kizh, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonialization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We're grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. And we're dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians Kizh Nation, San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. And if you'd like to learn more about the First Peoples of Los Angeles County, please visit the Los Angeles City County Native American Indian Commission website. We can drop it in the chat, but it's lanaic.lacounty.gov. I want to share that in collaboration with the LA City County Native American Indian Commission, the LA County Department of Arts and Culture engaged local tribal leaders on the development of the land acknowledgement for the county as part of the countywide cultural policy. And on November 1, I'm pleased to share the land acknowledgement was adopted formally by the Board of Supervisors. Now, the Department of Arts and Culture is working with the Native American Indian Commission to turn the guidance shared by tribes into toolkits and training resources on when and how to use a land acknowledgement, which we will share countywide with all county departments, but also with grantees, cultural institutions, and municipalities countywide later next year. So if you're on our lists or you check back on our websites, we'll continue to update you and share those as they become available. So with that, as Angie said, welcome to the first workshop for Creative Recovery LA. We are thrilled to be able to launch this initiative that we created to address the pandemic impacts on our arts and culture sector, while also thinking about the catalytic power of arts and culture to promote the recovery, healing, well-being, economy, and civic engagement of our entire county. I'm excited for you to learn more about this program, which is responsive to key needs, including relief and recovery, creative jobs, career pathways, youth, and of course, our long-term aims of advancing cultural equity and supporting the long-term sustainability of the sector. Creative Recovery LA was funded by the LA County Board of Supervisors through the American Rescue Plan, the federal American Rescue Plan dollars that were made available to us at the local level. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that I believe we may have some of our appointed leaders from our Los Angeles County Arts Commission with us today, and maybe they'll be able to turn their camera on and wave or put their name in the chat. Do we have President Eric Eisenberg, hailing from the 4th District, here with us? Great. Eric Eisenberg is here as president of the Arts Commission and appointed by Supervisor Hahn, who's currently chair of the board. And we may have other arts commissioners. I can't see your faces right now because there's so many folks on this. But if you are here and you are an arts commissioner, please ensure you put your name in the chat, wave so folks can see you, and you're free to say which supervisorial district you represent. So I'm now going to have the privilege of turning this over to our Director of Grants and Professional Development. That's Angie Gaspar-Milanovic. And she is going to take you through all the details and an overview of the program. I have to thank, of course, Angie, as well as internally. We really did this as a multi-divisional team, having folks from grants in their leadership, of course, Angie and team, but also even our research team, our chief deputy, our communications folks, our administrative folks, myself, and others to bring this to you today. I also have to acknowledge our partners, community partners, who are going to be working with us as a third-party administrator. And so we have Yvonne and others on this call. We thank the leadership of the Board of Supervisors for recognizing the value of arts and culture and allocating this funding for this program, our arts commissioners, and all arts supporters. So with that, Angie, I turn it to you.
Thank you so much for being here, Kristen, and welcoming this very large group. This is a big Zoom, but it's also big money that's going to be available. So thank you for making the time to be here. As we mentioned, this will be recorded. It will be available online. And we will have more workshops scheduled for January, February, both virtual and in person. So this is not the only opportunity, but we did want to give the heads up so that as organizations, you can start to prepare some of the materials you'll need when the application opens in January. I also just want to give a shout out to the grants and professional development team. Folks are here as well. Mara Morris, Rosalind Escobar, and Martina Hernandez. You know them in their capacity in the programs that the other grant programs that we run through this agency. So I am going to get started. I want to make sure, can everyone, let's see, can everyone see this slide with an agenda? Visible. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is review the Creative Recovery LA program and give you an overview. This is 5 programs in one, and this is the first time we're doing something like this with the intention of streamlining and making it as easy as possible for applicants. We're going to review the timeline. We're going to look at the eligibility requirements for each of the 5 programs. We'll go into tips to prepare a successful application. And we, of course, want to make sure that there's enough time to answer your questions today in this session. I will say that we will prepare an FAQ that will be available online. There will be multiple points of entry where you can ask questions. And since this is the first workshop, this is also kind of the read on kind of where more of the questions are, and maybe in future presentations, we'll spend some more time unpacking guidelines, requirements, and that sort of thing. So I just want to say, though, thank you for being here today. As Kristen shared, the purpose of Creative Recovery LA is to provide relief and recovery aid to the nonprofit arts and culture sector that we all know has been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is, we are able to provide this funding thanks to the LA County Board of Supervisors through the American Rescue Plan Act. In terms of how much total funding is available, it's over $26 million. And as many of you know that have been doing this work for a long time, this is an enormous opportunity for this region to access relief and recovery funding. In terms of how we're approaching this opportunity, Community Partners is going to administer the 5 grant opportunities through one streamlined, consolidated application. Below, you see the 5 opportunities, and we're going to do a deep dive into each one, but you can see how the funding has been allocated per each program. And you can see there that there's a range. So I'm going to go into universal eligibility requirements for this. There is a suite of questions that all applicants will answer. And then you will, through the online application system, be able to select the grant programs that you're applying for. And there will be some additional questions for each opportunity. So I hope that makes sense. And as we go through, I think it will become clearer. Just some important dates to keep in mind. This week, we will have the full complete guidelines as well as the sample application available online. The application period for this grant program will be from January 18th to February 15th. We are organizing additional online and in-person workshops, as well as additional technical assistance. Yvonne and I are going to be your point people for this. We will share the emails at the end of the presentation, but there will be opportunities to, if you have very specific questions that you want to email, you'd like to set up a call to just talk through your organization's eligibility. All of that will be easy and accessible through the community partners webpage. Then after the application closes on February 15th, the application review will be in February and March. And the goal is to have all of the awards distributed by the end of April. So this is a big timeline for the spring in order to get all of these, all of the funding out to you as nonprofits in the sector. So I'm going to go through the universal eligibility requirements first. So this is any organization that is applying for funding needs to meet these requirements. And what we'll do is I'll go through the initial requirements, and then I think we can pause and see if there are any specific questions there so that you're not having to wait until an hour and a half from now to get your question answered. So in terms of organizations that are eligible to apply to any of these 5 opportunities, nonprofit arts organizations with 501c3 status or that possess a Model A fiscal sponsorship are eligible to apply. We are defining a nonprofit arts organization as a nonprofit with a mission that provides arts programming as demonstrated by more than 50% of the organization's total budget devoted to arts programming. The next group that is eligible to apply are nonprofit organizations that are not arts organizations, but that provide arts and culture programming. And we define this as less than 50% of their organizational budget is devoted to arts related programming. So this is social service, social justice, health, human services agencies that have arts and culture programming as part of their organization. And the third category is Indigenous serving organizations with either 501c3 status or that have Model A fiscal sponsorship that are providing arts and culture or cultural heritage community programming. We are defining Indigenous serving organizations as those with a primary mission to serve Native or Indigenous communities, as further reflected in governance, leadership, and or community served. So I think that the big takeaway here is you're a nonprofit 501c3. You may be an arts org, you may not, but you are providing arts programming in LA County. In addition to these requirements, you also have to meet all of the following at the time you apply in January. You had to have been in operation prior to March 1st, 2020, and you were affected by the pandemic and required closures. So this is relief and recovery funding. So that means that your organization was functioning prior to the pandemic hitting. You have to be able to demonstrate at least 3 years of providing arts and culture programming, either in person or online, since January 1st, 2019 in LA County. You have to be located in and serving LA County, and we are looking at the address on your 990 to verify this. Again, you also have to have principal offices in LA County, as evidenced by the address on your 990. And you also have to have a functioning board of directors that is meeting regularly, with at least 51% of members residing in California. Let me just go through the ineligible organizations, and then we can pause for questions if folks have them. So organizations that are not eligible to apply are Los Angeles County departments, federal, state, or municipal departments and agencies, private membership organizations not open to the general public, K through 12 schools, both public, private, and continuation, organizations whose primary mission is to raise funds, as well as departments, centers, or institutes of higher education or educational institutions that lead to a degree or diploma, including but not limited to private or public schools, scholarship programs, colleges, universities. This also includes departments and programs within therein. We do allow for separate 501c3 nonprofit organizations that are located on a college or university campus, but it has to be separate from the college or university. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions here that we might be able to answer quickly. Because if you're ineligible, you don't have to sit through the rest of this presentation, I guess is the short way of saying it. So please put your questions in the chat, and then Yvonne is going to help field some of those. Anything coming through, Yvonne?
Yeah, some folks are asking, will the presentation and slides be downloadable today? And that's a yes on both of our websites for later this week. So we're quick, but we're not that quick. So yes, we'll have this presentation up later this week for you all to access. I'm going to put the websites for both community partners and the department in the chat as well, so you all have them. And another question we've got is, how long is the funding available? How soon must it be spent after it is awarded? Angie, can you speak to that one?
Sure, and that's a great question. So the funds, our goal is to have them dispersed by the end of April 2023, and organizations will have through December 31st, 2026 to expend the funds. Now, some may spend that much faster than December 31st, 2026, but organizations have until then to expend funds.
Great. We have another question. If the organization provides arts programming to justice-involved youth and programming that leads to a diploma, is it still eligible? It is a 501c3 and not a school or educational institution.
That may be one we need to unpack a little bit further online, but yes, if it's not an educational institution, but it is a 501c3 nonprofit, then it sounds like yes, but feel free to message me privately in the chat and we can follow up.
Great, a lot of questions here, so bear with me. Can you please define what required closures mean? If the office shut down and in-person programs became virtual during the pandemic, does that count?
Yes, it does. And a word on that, I do want to say that, you know, when the original closures happened in March 2020, Some organizations were able to quickly pivot and provide online programming. Some were not, just depending on the nature of the work that they did, and it may have taken a little bit longer to recalibrate all of that. So it's really looking at, was your organization affected by COVID-19 and the required closures? And I would say for most of the organizations, that answer would be yes.
Great. Can arts programming be at public schools, instrumental instruction and performances?
It can take place in school or out of school or after school. It just can't be a school, if that makes sense.
Great. Some of these questions will be answered in the guidelines once we get those up later this week on our websites. So I'm going to pick ones that are sort of in that gray area that others might have as well. We've answered the closure questions, but if you feel it was not answered, again, you can reach out and or refer to the guidelines for a more specific answer. Do we have an award range for each program? Angie?
Yes, and we'll go into the award range when we go through each program. If there aren't any other questions regarding eligibility or
Angie and Yvonne, I do see one that we should just reiterate in the chat, which is, are we eligible if we're not currently receiving Gen Op funding from the county? And the short answer is yes, you do not have to be a current grantee of the county. So we should just make sure that's really clear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kristen.
And also, just to add to that, I know that when we had CARES Act funding a few years ago in 2020, because of the timeline to get those dollars out the door, it was limited to our current grantees as well as grantees of any of the municipal arts funders. This is not the case for this program. You do not have to be a current grantee of our agency or of another municipal arts funder. We are trying to spread the word far and wide about this program. So if you know of nonprofits or fiscally sponsored Model A orgs that maybe don't have government funding yet, this would be that opportunity for them to apply. Okay, anything else, Yvonne, for now?
A lot of the questions are about the timeline of operation that demonstrates eligibility. And again, that will be laid out in the guidelines for folks to take a look at. And if there are further questions, again, you can always reach out to us.
Okay.
I think these are more specific questions, again, that I think you might address later in the presentation and or in the guidelines. So we'll hold off for now. Thanks for everyone for posting, and we'll be taking a look at the chat later after the workshop.
And also, I just want to add, thank you for adding in your questions. This will help me put together the FAQ so that we want to make sure that we're responding to questions that folks have. Oops. Additionally, ineligible organizations, those that do not provide any arts and cultural programs or services, organizations that have not provided any arts and culture programs or services from 2019 to 2022, and organizations that have suspended or inactive status with the California Secretary of State at time of application. We will go over this in just a moment. And just to reiterate, individuals and individual artists are not eligible to apply to Creative Recovery LA. This is for 501c3 nonprofits. If you are a fiscally sponsored organization, Model A comprehensive sponsorship agreements, we need to see that verification. And fiscal sponsors who may have more than one, who may be fiscally sponsoring more than one organization are eligible to apply. So it can be for multiple projects. In terms of the required financial documentation, and I just want to stress, this is one of the reasons why we're doing this workshop today, is so that you know what all of the pieces are that you're going to have to put together for the application, and that you have enough time to do that before it opens in January. So the first piece is your 501c3 IRS determination letter that shows proof of your organization's tax exempt status, as well as your EIN number. This is something that through our online application system, we no longer request it because it's built into our program. But for this program, you will need it. So it's an opportunity to find that PDF and make sure that you have it ready to attach. We are also requesting a submitted federal form 990, 2020 or 21 that ends on or after December 31st, 2020, and it lists an LA County address. This is also a critical piece of information. If it has a July 2020 address date, it will not be acceptable. It has to be December 31st, 2020 or later. If your organization has a budget of less than $50,000, you can submit the 990N or the 990 Easy. That's not a problem. You can submit the postcard. We are going to ask you for a screenshot of the California Secretary from the California Secretary of State website showing active status for your organizations. So you can either take a screenshot of that and save it as a JPEG, or you can download the certificate on the website. Take a moment to go in here and check and make sure it says active, because this was a point during CARES Act where some organizations thought they were, and they were not, and could not rectify the situation in time to make the application cut off. So take a moment to double check, take that screenshot. All we're asking for is the JPEG. There's nothing else that you have to purchase or download from the website. For any organizations with an operating budget of 2 million or more, we are also requiring a financial audit that also the end date is on or after December 31st, 2020. And finally, if you're for the Model A fiscally sponsored organizations, we're asking for a copy of the agreement or verification letter from your fiscal sponsor with the application, along with the sponsor's most recent 990 listing a state of California address. So the fiscal sponsors have to be located in California. They may be outside of LA County, but the project itself has to be located in LA County. Are there any questions on these pieces? Okay. How are we prioritizing equity in LA County for this program? There is another element to eligibility for Creative Recovery LA. We are prioritizing organizations that are located in or have a primary program location located in or within 1 mile of the highest need and high need census tracts. If you're an organization that is not within a highest or high need census tract, but otherwise you meet all of the other eligibility requirements, you will receive secondary priority, priority zone 2 organizations. There is a very easy way to see which zone your organization falls in. And that is this website here, the https arcg.is. It's thanks to Bronwyn Malden and our incredible research and evaluation team, Matt Augustine as well. They've built a tool so that you don't have to go into a complicated government website to see which census tract your organization falls under. You can go in there, type in your address, and see if you're priority zone 1 or priority zone 2. A couple of things in the application, we are going to ask you for multiple addresses. We are asking for the address in your on your 990. That should be an LA County address. If you have a different administrative address, we will request that as well. We will also request your primary programming address. Then we will ask you, do you have an address that's in priority zone 1? So you have 3 chances there are up to 3 addresses you can put in the system to see if they are priority zone 1. If they are not, you will be in priority zone 2. You will still be eligible for funding, but the majority of the funds will be going to priority zone 1 organizations. And the reason for this is that we are looking at the highest and high need census tracts, those communities that have been hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and priority is going to fund organizations located there or programming there. Are there any questions on this piece?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Jim Enninger. I'm with Classical Crossroads, and we present chamber music concerts. And one thing we learned during COVID was that, well, to back up a second, we since March of 2020, we have streamed all our concerts. And one thing we learned during COVID is there are lots of people who have been enjoying the streamed events, irrespective of COVID. They couldn't get to our concerts before. So we're going to continue to stream the concerts to these people. They might be too old or disabled or can't get to the concerts. And that'll be a priority for us. And so we serve all of Los Angeles County. Would that count to get us into priority 1?
You'll have to type in your organization's address and it will tell you if it's priority 1 or priority zone 2. So you'll have to type it into the tool and see.
Okay, so it's based where our organization is based, not who we serve in
Correct.
the county.
It's where your it's the organization location. And thank you for that question, because I know that it's going to be one that several have. And that's why we're capturing in the application what's in the 990, where's your admin address, programming address, and where is your primary programming address. We understand that some organizations may have an admin office located in one place, but they're primarily serving schools or have their theater in another location. So it gives 3 opportunities for organizations to include addresses, and then check in the on the website if they're a priority zone 1 or a priority zone 2.
I have one other quick question. I just got on to the meeting because I had trouble finding the right meeting Zoom address. Will these charts be available to us?
Yes.
So I could review them? And
Yes.
how would that be?
We will be, this will all be available on the website later this week. So we will provide those details at the end of this meeting. And so more information will be available along with the guidelines, the full application, FAQ, and recording of this meeting.
Okay, one quick question. When is the application due date?
We covered this, sir. So we're going to just move forward so that we can get through all of the applications, and then
Okay.
we can follow up with you separately afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, if folks can turn off their mics, and Yvonne is monitoring the chat so that we can get through all of the questions today. Thank you. Are there other questions on the prioritizing equity and the priority zone 1 or 2s?
I think you answered the majority of folks' questions. There are a lot of organizations serving across LA County, and I think you just spoke to that. Someone mentioned that the link seems to just lead to a general map. There's a pop-out function that comes out on the left-hand side of your screen where you enter in your address, and then it will locate, the map will identify the zone there. So you might want to revisit your your privacy settings there. Let me see. Yep, a lot of these. So what is the third potential address besides admin and programming? This is, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So we're asking for your 990 has to have an LA County address to be eligible. But we know that in some cases, this is a PO box. It may be a home address for some of our smaller organizations. So there's the address on your 990. Then some of you may have a separate admin address. So we're asking for that address. And then your primary programming address. And then from there, we'll ask you, are any of those addresses a priority zone 1? And if not, then you'll automatically be in priority zone 2, which means you will still be eligible for funding. But the priority will be going to organizations located in or within a mile of those census tracts that have been hardest hit by the pandemic. Okay. All right. Going to go into the next section. We're also funding priority to organizations with budgets of less than 15 million. This is also about focusing on the small and mid-sized organizations that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 and have less capital usually while serving the county's most vulnerable communities. So if your organization has a budget of over 15 million, you are still eligible to apply. This is just like CARES Act, but you're not going to receive a larger grant based on your larger budget size, but still eligible for funding. So again, we're prioritizing you if you are located or provide services in or within a mile of the highest and high need census tracts. Thanks to the very easy to use LA County Equity Explorer, you can determine that right away. We will ask it in the application, but also it will be verified by staff when we review applications. Now I'm going to review, this is the first relief and recovery grant. This is one of the 5 opportunities. I will say this, if you have reviewed all of the materials and you find that you are eligible, meeting all of the universal eligibility requirements, you should be 100% eligible to apply to the relief and recovery grant. The total available funds for this grant is 14.2 million. We are estimating the award range based on information that we have about number of organizations that are likely to apply and where they're located, that the award range is at minimum $1,000 and maybe up to $50,000, depending on a number of factors. The purpose of this grant program, Relief and Recovery Grant, is to support the recovery of the arts and creative economy sector of LA County. So this ensures that all of the organizations that have been providing art services and hit by COVID-19, this is your general operating fund. This can help hire or retain staff or contractors and artists, implement COVID-19 mitigation and infection prevention measures, support your general operations and programs, and support local community and recovery through your arts programming. So if you are eligible, apply for this, apply for this opportunity. There are no other additional eligibility requirements, and here we've outlined how you can use the fund. It's very, the idea is to be as easy for organizations as possible to use the fund for to support their general operations. So this is the Relief and Recovery Grant. Any questions on this grant in particular? When you get to this part of the application, I think it's only, I want to say that with all 5 of these programs, overall, there's a lot of drop down please choose most appropriate. This is not a heavy narrative application, although, you know, we do ask you about your mission, we do ask you about your programming, but this is a lot of short answer questions for this application. Any questions on the Relief and Recovery Grant? Okay. The next one is the Reopening Culture, Tourism, and Marketing Grant. As you can see, this is a much smaller pot of money. This is $1.7 million. And we expect the awards to be at minimum $1,000 to $15,000, depending. And the purpose of this funding is to support your marketing efforts that helps amplify reopening in the cultural sector, encourages arts and cultural tourism. This is really about your organization being able to access some funds to help promote and market your arts programming to your audiences. And that can be a wide range. So if you, again, meet the universal eligibility requirements and you're applying for relief and recovery funding, you should also be applying for Reopening Culture, Tourism, and Marketing Grant. It's a smaller grant, but it can help support those efforts. And it's also not a lot of questions. We're going to ask you how you will use the funding to support your efforts, which is essentially this list here, and you can mark how you think you might use it, and you can also provide additional information if something here is not covered. So again, this is another like 1 or 2 questions in the application. Any questions for this one?
A lot of folks are asking if they can apply for more than one category. The answer is yes, if you meet the requirements.
Yes, yes. And so there are 5 opportunities with the first 2, the Relief and Recovery Grant and this one. If you're eligible for this grant program, you should be applying for both of these programs. You will be eligible. This next one is the Creative Works and Jobs for Artists Grant. The total available amount of funds is $4.7 million. We are expecting the grant awards to be in the range of $1,000 to $25,000. This is to support the employment of artists for creative works, artist-led projects, and public programs. So the funds can be used for commissions, jobs, residencies, productions, performances, and other similar programs that engage artists and creative projects. Given that this is an arts and culture grant, many of you very likely are working with artists or hiring folks for artist-led projects and public programs. I will go into the next page. We are asking here for a demonstrated history of programs or projects that engage artists for creative works, artist-led projects, and public programs. And we will ask you how you plan to use the funds to support the employment of artists and programmatic activity that results in creative works, artist-led projects, and public programs. So here's an example of some of the eligible uses, expenses, activities for this funding. Again, if your organization has been employing artists for a long time and or engages artists for creative projects that are outlined here, then you should apply for this funding. And when we ask for demonstrated history, that means that we are going to ask for links to your website, descriptions of your programs. So there will be space there for you to outline and show your demonstrated history of working with artists and creating jobs for artists.
Angie, a lot of folks are asking about the distinction of, if any, between artists and teaching artists. Are teaching artists included in this particular grant category?
If you're hiring teaching artists, this would fall under employment of artists. But it's also looking at programmatic activity that supports creative works, artist-led projects, and public programs. So it's, I think a good way to think about it is, what is the end result? Is it a creative work? Is it a program? Artist residencies, commissioning. So it depends on it, it depends on the nature of the program, and more will be outlined in the guidelines. There are other questions? And please put them in the chat. We're tracking all of this so that we can turn around a very robust FAQ for you in the next few days. Okay. Creative Career Pathways for Youth grant. The total amount available here is $3 million. This is an award range of approximately $10,000 to $150,000. This is a grant program for nonprofits that are currently and have been engaged with and have a demonstrated history of supporting career pathways and training programs in the arts and creative fields for youth, early career and emerging professionals underrepresented in the arts and creative sector. So that those who have historically experienced barriers to accessing these careers are job ready as the economy recovers and stabilizes. So the funds can be used for training and career pathway programs that are already in existence at your organization, as well as general operating funds to support your capacity and fiscal sustainability. We, in the demonstrated history program portion of this, we do ask you to outline the program that you have had in place since before the pandemic, who you're serving, how you're serving them, as well as links to your website pages. We will also ask you to briefly describe your plans to use the fund and how they'll support career pathways or training programs. There's in the guidelines, there are also definitions. If some of you are asking, what does opportunity youth mean? What does systems impacted youth mean? What does historically underrepresented mean, or precluded youth? But for those that are working in this field, these should be fairly familiar definitions based on the work that your organization is already engaged in. And let me go into the next page. So grantees that are eligible for this fund will be able to use it for general operating and programmatic costs. So everything from planning, implementation, and evaluation of these programs that are connecting youth underrepresented in the arts to creative careers. Some program activity examples include career exploration, college and career readiness, fellowships, internships, apprenticeships, technical skill building, youth jobs in the arts, stipends, as well as general operating costs to support your organization. Any questions on this program?
A few questions, generally speaking. This is one application with questions that are specific for each category. So if you qualify, you would have to fill in information where the questions are asked specifically to those categories. So it's just one application, not 5.
Correct. It's when you're in the online system, it will be one application, and then you'll mark of the 5 opportunities which ones you're applying to, and then you'll have to answer the additional questions for each opportunity. Should I move on to the next one?
Yeah, I think we've either addressed these questions and will also be providing the answers to those and many more through the guidelines and the frequently asked questions document that will be up later this week. So so hang on, because all of that will be included.
Okay, and the next opportunity is the Art for Justice Involved Youth Grant. This is a total available fund of 2.8 million. We anticipate the awards will be 10,000 to 150,000. This is a grant program that will support nonprofits that are using the arts to support justice system involved youth, justice system impacted youth and communities, as well as youth at greater risk of becoming justice system involved. So this is an opportunity to use the fund for arts-based youth development programs, as well as general operating funds to support the capacity of the organizations. Again, this is one where we're asking for demonstrated history of providing programs to support these communities and populations. And you'll also have to briefly describe how you're planning on using the funds. Again, this is not a, oh, we would love to be working in this field and want to develop programs to serve these populations. This is for organizations that have been already engaged in this work prior to the pandemic. Again, this is an opportunity for planning, implementation, and evaluation of the programs that are already in place. So it's an opportunity also to deepen those services. Here are some of the programmatic activity examples. So everything from arts education or direct instruction, family and community engagement centered in arts and cultural practice, arts-based youth leadership programs, peace building and community healing centered in creative or cultural practices. Also artistic works, artist support, artist-led cultural activities or arts-based narrative change, cultural organizing, case management, mentorship, advisement, hosting and transportation to serve these populations. There is an opportunity there to potentially describe if something is not listed here, as well as general operating costs for the organization. Are there any questions with this one? And there will be more details in the guidelines, and you will also have access to the sample application so you can see the specific questions that will be asked for each opportunity. Any questions on this one, Yvonne?
Getting a lot of repeat questions. One question is, if youth pathways and justice involved, quote unquote, both are applicable for an organization's programming, can they apply to both funding streams for the same program?
Absolutely. Yes, any of the 5 programs that your organization is eligible for, you should be applying to. So you could potentially be eligible for Arts for Justice Involved Youth, Creative Career Pathways, the Marketing Grant, the Relief and Recovery Grant. It's going to be a smaller subset of organizations that are engaged in all of this work across the board. But the first 2 grant opportunities, we anticipate that the majority of organizations will be applying for those funds. But as we shared, the pots of money are also different. They're not all the same, but it all totals $26 million.
Someone would like clarification on what is meant by arts-based narrative change.
These are organizations that are working in communities that have been hard hit by the pandemic and working with supporting justice system involved youth, impacted youth and communities. And so this is about the work that they're doing. It's not just the end result of whatever the arts program is, but that it's also an opportunity to shift the narrative of how we're talking about these issues. If there's someone from Arts Ed that can pipe in with a deeper explanation, that would be awesome. But I will also make sure that we include a definition in subsequent workshops. Okay, Any other questions on this one? I know it's a lot. Thank you, Yvonne, for everything you're doing.
Yeah, and
Well, with this PowerPoint.
thanks for everyone who's writing the questions in here. As Angie mentioned, these will be contributing to the FAQ document that's under development. So again, clarifying that an organization can apply for funding for the same program under different categories. So the program qualifies under 2 categories. Let's say they want to folks want to clarify that they can indeed apply for both.
Yes, they can. Of course, the funding, you can't use the funding twice for the same expense, right? Like you've got to, you'll have to show the various expenses, but yes, both of them allow for general operating costs. So if you're looking at rent, at salary, staffing, technology enhancements, if you were to receive funding from both, that would expand, how much you could use the funding for in a variety of expenses for your organization.
Okay. Yeah, others' questions will be addressed either through the guidelines or through the FAQ document.
Okay. Oops.
Oh, one more is any matching fund requirements.
No matching fund requirements, and that's I need to add that at the top of the presentation. So no match required, and also no reporting required. So I hope there's a collective cheer out in Zoom land about that. There is no final report required. We will reach out to organizations if they do want to share, after the funding goes out, success stories, how they've used the funding, images to help tell that story and its impact in LA County. That will be phenomenal, but it will not be required of everyone. We're looking for a coalition of the willing to help share those stories, but those details will also be in the guidelines. And more importantly, after the awards are announced, details on how to do that. So I'm going to move into tips for preparing a successful application. Please review the guidelines thoroughly once they're available online. Only apply to the opportunities your organization is eligible for. If you're not sure, send an email to schedule an appointment to discuss. This is critical. Don't just apply for all of them. If your organization is not, doesn't have a demonstrated history of engaging in the work that we've outlined for 3 of the programs, please don't apply to try to increase your chances. Our goal is to fund as widely as possible to all organizations for all of the opportunities that they are eligible for. And so we will be reviewing all of the applications, links, attachments, materials that are submitted to ensure eligibility. Prepare the required financial documentation in advance. Check now to make sure you have all of those PDFs, that everything's in order. If you need to call an accountant to get some of that, now is that window to do it. As I shared, the application will open January 18th. It'll close February 15th. This next point is critical. There will be no grace period to provide missing materials. I know that with some of our grant programs, you apply and there's a bit of a window and we contact you if something's missing, and sometimes there's a back and forth to get all of the materials ready for panel. But this is a truncated timeline and we don't have the time or the bandwidth to review and have a back and forth to get correct materials. This is why we're sharing this workshop today, so that you can prepare all of your materials and have them ready to go when the application opens. and definitely to be able to apply by February 15th when it closes. You will have access to the sample application later this week, so you'll be able to see what are the drop-down menu questions, the check all that apply, and for the very few narrative questions, an opportunity to start to prepare those. Some of them you are very familiar with if you're a grantee of our organization, but if you're not, it's fairly standard in terms of mission and history, about your organization, as well as information about your programs to determine eligibility. Submit the application before the deadline. We recommend 5 days before, just to make sure there's nothing, if there's any issues that we can troubleshoot to make sure your application is submitted on time. But we also know through our other grant programs that there's a lot of folks in the system the day before finalizing their materials. And we just want to caution, there's 2 of us and we're expecting hundreds of applications. So the earlier you get to us with any questions, the better it will be that we can respond to you. The day of will not be a great day to start the process. So I know everybody knows this. I know there's so much that you're dealing with as nonprofits. This is another grant to prepare for on very busy timelines. And so we're trying to, the whole point is to give you as much lead time as possible, and to have a streamlined, easy application to be able to complete and submit. Any questions on this piece?
Thanks everyone who's asking about how awards and award amounts are determined. In addition to the priority zones and requirements or qualifications for each of the programs, that I'm sure will be addressed as we move forward with the FAQ and updated guidelines. So thank you. We see you. We will be addressing that in more detail.
So questions. So I'm going to share, this is the slide with county information, and then I'm going to share community partners, their webpage and email address. So if you have questions about whether you're eligible or not, please email this arpagrants@arts.lacounty.gov email. Please don't email us individually at the grants and professional development team, because everyone is managing hundreds of emails in their respective programs. So we created this mailbox to be able to ensure that we can respond quickly to emails here. We also have a landing page for Creative Recovery LA. And we will have the link that will go directly to the community partners page, where you'll be able to access guidelines, sample application, FAQ, as well as workshops. I know that some on this call may not be current grantees and may be new to this process altogether. So there are additional LA County grant opportunities on the CEO's website. So there are all of the programs available for nonprofits that are providing arts programs. All of our programs are there listed individually, but there are other grant programs there as well that you may want to take a look at. I took a look this morning. I think there's another 6 or 7, and I believe there are more coming. And some of these are very specific, like organizations or businesses that are working with immigrants, et cetera. So some of them are very specific opportunities, and you have to look through each one to see, if your organization might be eligible. But they're all listed on one page, which I think is really helpful from a county perspective. For all other questions, including technical assistance on accessing the grant application portal, we're going to ask that you contact community partners. That email is creativerecovery@communitypartners.org. They also have a dedicated phone line where you can leave a message. And the web page is here, communitypartners.org/LA County-creative recovery. Please note, Community Partners offices will be closed December 19th through January 2nd. So email and phone messages will be returned beginning January 3rd, 2023. And thank you. So I'm going to actually stop sharing so that we can, if there are other questions, we have some time to discuss. Here we go. Oh, great. Now it's so great to see everybody. Hi, everyone. And I also just want to share that we will, on the website, there will also be additional workshops as well, both in person and virtual. I think we'll have another 3 virtual workshops. And then we are partnering with the LA County Libraries to have a workshop one in each supervisorial district. So they are finalizing those spaces for us, and we'll be sharing that. That will also be available on the website. So if you want to, you can hop on another call, another webinar, apologies, in January or February. And then the goal is to have also weekly in person. Yvonne and I are also working out a schedule for office hours so that you'll be able to access, you know, I just want to talk to someone for 5 minutes and just talk through it so you can schedule one-on-one appointments, and one of us will get back to you. I saw a question in here about data arts profile, not required for this application because, okay, collective cheer, because this is open to arts nonprofits as well as social service, social justice organizations that don't have to, they're not arts organizations, so they're not completing that information. Woohoo from Lace, okay. Message heard and received. You've already done this for OGP, so you don't have to do it again. I hope that that is helpful. And when I say that this application will be as streamlined as possible, once you go through the universal questions for each application after that, it's only a couple of questions per grant application. So this is not a 60-page application that you have to complete. I'm taking a look at, let's see, some of the questions. Post the community partners info again. Can funds be used to support salaries for undocumented non-DACA youth? Thank you for that question. So this has come up before, and if they are employees at your organization, then you're following all local, state, federal laws in terms of employment. And so we could certainly have a conversation offline, but if they are on your payroll, they need to be eligible to work in the United States. Will the application be savable? Yvonne, maybe for any of the, because it will, what is the platform that you're using, Yvonne? And can you tell us just a little bit about it? Because it's not SurveyMonkey Apply.
No, it's it will be submittable, and I believe submittable allows saving as a draft, or forget the wording they use, but yes to that question.
This is, yes, the question of, is this a one-time opportunity? Yes. And in my 15 years at this agency, we've never received this amount of funding for nonprofits. And so this is huge. After in 2010, after the recession, I believe we had a $500,000 we were able to distribute to a handful of organizations. And through the work that was done in 2020 with CARES Act, we distributed $12 million to 336 nonprofits through that program. This $26 million that's now available to this sector, that is a huge thanks to the LA County Board of Supervisors for understanding how this sector was affected, and that recovery takes longer in arts and culture than other sectors. And so I also just, I want to shout out the advocacy of our leadership, our commissioners, the Board of Supervisors, in understanding how critical this is to the field. This is one-time money, and it's a huge boon. Some of you know that have been receiving OGP funding for many years. That's a $9 million 2-year program. It's $4.5 million. That's distributed every year, managed with a lot of love by Roz Escobar and Ann Jensen. And we have the Community Impact Arts Grant that's $750,000 that goes to 60+ organizations. So the numbers are very, very different. So this is that opportunity to apply and to also have some space to use the funding. As we shared earlier, you have through December 31st, 2026. And so for those organizations that are eligible for the Creative Career Pathways, the Justice Involved, there will be, it's not a grant where, oh, you know, we got the money, now we have to spend it by August, and how, you know, how does this help us? You have some time in there to plan. And to plan accordingly for your organization, for your staffs, for the audiences and folks that you serve. Trying to see if there are other questions that we can.
A lot of folks have been asking if budget size will be taken in as a factor around awards.
It is taken as, yeah, it is taken as a factor, but I would say geography is more of a determining factor. So when you look at the tool that's been created, and to see if you're a priority 1 or a priority 2 organization, again, if you're eligible for this program, if you're a 501c3 or a fiscally sponsored Model A organization with arts programming based in LA County, and you have all of your financial documentation aligned and ready to go, you will be eligible for at least, I would say, 2 of the programs, the Relief and Recovery Grant and the Tourism Marketing Grant. The next 3 are organizations engaged in very specific programming. But if you're eligible and complete everything, there's, I mean, I can't say everyone will get money, but like you have to, if it's all there, you should be receiving funding. And so it's not so much about what your budget size is, unless you're over $15 million. In that case, you're not going to get more than anybody else based on your bigger budget size. Other questions? And again, I know some folks maybe came after I gave this explanation, but in the application, we are asking you for the address on your 990, your administrative address, your programming address. So there will be 3 addresses. And some of you may have 3 distinct addresses, others may not, and that's absolutely okay. But you'll be able to check to see if you're in priority zone 1 or priority zone 2. The 990, it has to be on or after December 31st, 2020. So if it's a July 2020, it will not be accepted. This piece I can't stress enough, because the team spends a lot of time in contact with orgs after they submit their OGP applications. Make sure that it's the most up-to-date 990, because we won't have time for a grant for a grace period after the application is submitted. This is not going to be a public panel process. We are looking to review and make sure that eligibility requirements have been met and therefore eligible for funding. And that is also to streamline the process and get funds out the door as quickly as possible by end of April of next year. Which next year, I mean, it'll be here very, very soon. Can we use our 2022 night? Absolutely, yes. Yes, we needed to put at least on or after a certain date, but I know as a year has gone by, some of you may have more up-to-date information. And again, budget size is important, but it's actually because this is federal funding and it's tied to census tracts that have been very hard hit. It's proving that it's an LA County address. If over $15 million budget, still eligible, yes. And it's not that it's not a priority. The address for that organization could be in a priority 1 zone, and that will receive priority. But organizations that are larger budget are not going to receive larger grants just because they have a bigger budget size. And that's a way for us to address equity with this funding. Let's see. Thank you for all of your messages. It's really nice to see so many of you that I haven't seen in person since the pandemic. I'm just trying to see if there are any other questions. This one, if I could just address this one, there were a lot of questions about programming with multiple addresses. How do we document programming address if we are partnering with another location? We will ask you to provide the address and then some sort of documentation that you are in fact programming there. So it could, you could be working in a school, you would have a contract or a letter from the school. You could have a link to your website with program description. We're trying to keep it as expansive as possible, but also know that like just contract it, like concrete info of what I have to submit in order to be eligible. So that will be outlined in the guidelines as well. And I think, who was it that had a question, or was it Kristen or?
Oh, no, I was going to lift up that exact question that you ended up answering. I saw that there were multiples about multiple program locations. So you got it. Thank you.
Yeah, we know that nonprofit organizations in LA County, it's a complicated, you are working, some of you, in many locations. So you have that opportunity to type in some addresses, find a programming location, as well as documentation to show that you're programming there.
Angie, one other one that I've seen that I don't know if you addressed, a couple of times someone has asked, do they have to show that their budget was reduced or impacted by COVID, which I think is what we did in CARES Act. So if you could address that.
Sure, we do have a few questions that ask, how was your organization affected by the pandemic? Part of this is so that we can also report back out to the field. They're very similar questions to what was asked during in the CARES Act application. And so there will be that opportunity to share back because there is no final report. And I repeat, there is no final report that needs to be submitted. We're trying to collect some of this data up front so that our research and evaluation team can analyze and report back. Because I think everybody knows how much has been, how much the field has been affected. There have been various surveys and reports. This will be an opportunity to have some more recent data for the region that we can report back on. And I saw a question. We have 3 addresses. Majority of our work is in LA. However, our 990 has our Fresno address. I would say no. The organization does have to be based in LA County, but you can also email me and we can schedule some time to discuss. But this is, again, because of the census tracts and it's showing where your organization is located, that will be, that's one of the determining factors. Yes, Pamela Bright Moon, and she is our second district commissioner who is here with us today as well. So thank you so much, Commissioner Bright Moon, for being here. We are working with LA County Libraries to host a workshop in each supervisorial district. They are going to give me that final list by the end of the week, and then we will set up Eventbrite registrations and you'll be able to attend something in person. And so we'll have the, the workshop, and then there's that opportunity for folks that want to stay after to ask their, their questions one-on-one. It's kind of I know sometimes on Zoom, it's like certain things you do want to ask, certain things you don't want to ask. And we want to make sure that that in person is available too. Okay, any other questions? Since this is American Rescue Plan funding, is this technically federal funding? Yes, this is American Rescue Plan funding through the county and administer, it's so many different layers, right? Federal funding that went to the LA County Board of Supervisors to our agency and administered by community partners. So keeping it simple.
Just to repeat for those who joined us later, a recording of this workshop overview along with the presentation will be available on our websites later this week.
When will the guidelines and sample application be available? This week as well. And so we will send an email out that, hey, everything's available online so that you can get started. And there is some general information on the website now. We have just been finalizing, and in part that's with, wanting to hear sort of what some of the questions are today so that I can more fully, if there's some areas to just more fully address, because any questions you have, somebody else that's not here today will likely also have the same question.
Could I ask a real quick question? I wrote it in the chat, is because this was an issue. Who can sign the actual grant application? Does it have to be someone listed with the Secretary of State? Because this became a problem for me last time.
It has to be someone that is authorized by your organization to sign. And I'm going to see if I can pull up the language in the sample app and I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because our county council just looked at it and we confirmed that language on Friday. So let me just. Okay, so the authorization and certification. So authorized official. Let me put this language in the chat. So we don't name who, but it should be an authorized official with the organization. Because here. There we go. So it must be a representative of the organization with authority to submit this application on behalf of the application organization. With our OGP contracts, and I think Roz is on the line, we've worked with county council. It's very specific who is able to sign a contract with us, but this is just one authorizing official who can submit. So that's usually not the development staff. It should be executive director. It may be the board chair. It also depends on how your organization is structured as well. For really small organizations, it may be the board chair, but you should be authorized to sign on behalf of your organization when submitting government grant opportunities. Okay, any other questions? All right. Is it possible to save a Zoom chat to review after the Zoom meeting? Yes, but we are going to try to turn that into the FAQ so that it's a little bit easier to read. This will be, we are saving it, and then that'll be the basis for questions and responses to them. Okay. But yes, we will definitely save the chat. Will receiving this funding preclude other federal funds, say NEA? Absolutely not. This is in addition to. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop the recording now. Since we've gone through workshop, PowerPoint, etc. If anybody wants to stay on and talk, ask some questions, we have a half an hour, and happy to do that. And I look forward to seeing you in the new year. Please reach out with your questions, concerns. Maybe sign up for another workshop or sign up for office hours. We absolutely want to make sure that all of your questions, concerns are addressed once the application window opens, as well as provide support during the application window. Just not at 4:45 on February 15th. Please no, okay?
And everybody's giving a lot of love and shout outs already in the chat, but I just want to take a moment to first of all thank all of you for coming to the first workshop for this really significant, unprecedented investment in the LA County arts field, Creative Recovery LA. You and all the nonprofit arts organizations, you all are and the nonprofit organizations that use the arts, you all are the lifeblood of our arts ecosystem. You help us engage and hire artists, to engage our communities. So you can see that's really embedded in the program and in addressing these key needs. Also, you're already saying great stuff, but join me in giving a huge thank you to Angie Gaspar-Milanovic for her time, her expertise, her leadership on this, our incredible crack team. I want to thank again Yvonne and the entire community partners team for being our partner on this. We couldn't deliver it without them. And every department, the county actually got almost $2 billion in American Rescue Plan money, and every department was given a little window of opportunity to propose, and I seized on it. And our crack team, we put together proposals to say in different key needs of youth, arts education, whatever we could do, bam, but nothing was guaranteed. And so at the end of the day, it is also by the grace and the belief in the power of the arts of our Board of Supervisors for including these programs in the final spending plan and allocation. And so again, we really thank them. And we thank the leadership of our entire field, our commissioners, Arts for LA, arts advocates, everybody, for raising the visibility of the arts. So we know you're going to do good things. And thanks to everybody. And thanks, Angie, for a great job, and Yvonne hosting today's workshop.
And thank you, Kristen, Heather, Brandon.
Yes.
A lot of late nights, emails, meetings, so that we could get to this point and have this amount of money to be able to share out to the field. None of it's easy. You don't see all of the sausage making, but it's happening. So anyway, with that, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording, which I said I would do 5 minutes ago, but now I will. And if you want to stay on and ask some more questions, I can stay on until 1 o'clock. So thanks, everybody.